you do one thread at a time. So a cluster block on Aida is done like this. If this is where you will start, instead of counting 4 threads, you will count 2 squares only. So up here and down 1, 2. So you are covering only 2 squares. So you put one in the hole and then into the middle of the square here, and then count 2 squares again, down in the middle, up again into the next hole, down there, up again in the middle, and then down, and then. So it's like this here. I put here in the hole, count 2 squares, and down here. And then I put another satin stitch in the middle of the square and down in another middle. So up here in the hole, down in the hole, up here in the middle, down in the middle, and you will end up in the another hole. So you will go into the 3 holes and 2 middles. So you still have the 5 satin stitches into your Aida fabric. Actually, it's easier to count when you do the Aida. But of course, it's finer looking and more dainty looking if you use the linen. So in the same way, you come up here, down there, in the middle, down here, middle, hole, hole, after 2 threads, middle, middle, and so on and so forth. You have to follow, I keep reminding this, you have to follow the sequencing. See, remember our first lesson? These lines are our cutting lines, but they will also help you tell that this is where your needle should come up, down. In the linen, after 4 threads. In the Aida, after 2 squares. So here, you make 5 satin stitches. And no diagonal stitches at the back. For you to do that, so your first cluster block, you came up here and down there. On your second, you come up here, not here, huh? Come up here, count 4 threads and down. Up, down, up, down. So, if you are following the red lines, you won't go wrong. And for example, you're already in this part. Make sure that this is the same line as this. Dapat magkakatapat sila. They should be on the same line, these two. So I want you to do the cluster blocks until the 12. So, since we're going to, you can pause the video, we will move on to the next cluster block. Assuming that you have done, this is what we're doing right now. Assuming that you have done this. To do the next one, you come up here, you come up here, you count 4 threads, down, 4, and then another 4. That means from this satin stitch, you count 8 threads, and then that's where you will start your first cluster block, up here and down, up, down. Again, from this, the first stitch of this cluster block, you count 8 threads down, and then you will start your cluster block again until you do all of this. To do the top one, or maybe it's the bottom one, you just turn your work upside down. Same thing. From here, you count 8 threads down, and so up, down, and then do the next motif. So you should be able to do the 3 motifs doing that. The important thing is what we're doing is we are skipping 4 threads between the motifs. So we're doing 3 motifs of this cluster block, and then later on we will do the cutting, and also we will do the dove's eye. I'm very fast in showing you this because I assume that you have watched the previous episodes of our Hardanger embroidery. If not, I would suggest that you go back to the preceding episodes and learn how to do this, and then do either on linen or on Aida. So when you're doing it on Aida, you will skip not 8 threads, but you will skip 4 threads, 4 squares, I mean. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So you start here and then start like this. I suggest that you use a sharp. Remember, we have been using the tapestry needle. The tapestry needle is blunt edge. It is not sharp. But when you do hardanger on Aida, I don't know, I have not seen any book suggesting that you use Aida. But for those who cannot secure linen or any finer weave fabric, to learn hardanger, I say you can use Aida, and this is how you do it. So I suggest that you use a sharp needle, because when you do the middle stitch, the stitch on the middle of the square, it is hard to use the tapestry needle. It's better to use the sharp. Okay, so you will do another motif here. Skip 4 squares, and then you start here and then go up. So another motif and another motif. And then we are ready to do our dove's eye, which is done with the needle weaving and this little fine design on the center of our cluster block. So I will show you how to cut from the Aida. So same thing, what I do is I cut first the 2 sides and then I cut the center. It's easier. And remember, always place your scissors on the left of the cluster block. Do not cut here, because that's putting your scissors on the right of the cluster block. This is the correct way. Scissors on the left, cluster block on the right. And when you cut this, you have to turn your work so that you will place your scissors on the left of the cluster block. So let's cut this. Just to review your cutting. Remember, you need sharp and pointed. Pointed because you have to go into the hole and make sure you come up on the last, so you do not accidentally cut the next thread. Okay? I usually do the sides first because it's easier to cut the middle. Again, into the first hole and then out. See how I leave the tip of the scissors out, so I don't cut the next fabric thread. So when you cut the center, it's easier. Scissors should be straight, not like this, not like that. Okay. So we'll cut all 4 corners into the hole and out on the first hole of the cluster block. Next side, scissors on the left of the cluster block. So let me just do this. And if you do not have pearl cotton, maybe you can use 2 or 3 strands. For the size 8, maybe you can use 3 strands of the regular cross stitch EMC skein, the floss, just to practice on the stitches. And then maybe if you really find this interesting, you can move on to the real linen fabric. It will not be as dainty as, but you learn. So sometimes it's hard to go through the whole of Aida.